Welcome to the Mindset Mile podcast, the show that'll leave you empowered to take action towards becoming the turned up version of your already awesome self. I'm your host, Aisha Zaza, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Hey friend, welcome back to another episode of the Mindset Mile podcast. Recently, I had the pleasure of being on the Create Your Shape podcast, a show hosted by licensed nutritionist Jenny Blake that is all about nutrition, macros, and pretty much everything you'd want to know about changing your body composition and creating sustainable habits with nutrition. I was super honored that Jenny asked me to take a deep dive into my macro-friendly meal prep book, Well Prepped, as she was one of the first people to purchase it when it dropped late last year. And right away, she started using it as a tool to offer her clients who take her Create Your Shape program. Needless to say, not only was it incredibly validating that my work was backed by a renowned nutritionist, but it was also so humbling to know that I created a tool that's making hundreds of people's lives easier, healthier, and more delicious. We took a deep dive into what Well Prepped is all about and how the process of prepping once and cooking twice to get delicious macro-friendly meals all week came about. And most importantly, why it's so important to create simple systems around the things we do frequently and or struggle to stay consistent with. Because when we are setting ourselves up for success, we create room and energy in other important areas of our lives. And this is exactly how we build consistency, which I know is something we all crave. In this interview, you'll learn everything I've learned about creating simple macro-friendly meals, how to maximize your time so that you're making most of your meals from home without being shackled to the kitchen, and maybe even learning how to enjoy some of the process as well. If after this episode, you're ready to get well prepped, I've added the link to the book in the show notes. And it is an ebook. So this is something that you're going to be sent right away and can store on your phone or print it however you like to have it. And of course, if you have any questions, you can always message me on Instagram at Aisha Zaza or send me an email at aisha@themindsetmile.com. I hope you enjoy, and I cannot wait to see you next week. And until then, make it a great day.
Hello, friends. On today's episode of the Create Your Shape podcast, I have the one and only Aisha Zaza on, and we're going to talk about being well repped. She is the master of this. And if you haven't been following along with her, first, I don't know if you guys remember, but I've had her on the podcast before, and I've also been on her podcast multiple times. We've also recently just hung out in Malibu. And I mean, I watch all of her stories. I know about her cats. I know about her cat that isn't her cat, like the whole thing. But I'm excited to have her on because she really is the master of this. And we're going to talk about why being well prepped is so important to reaching your goals. And also, she just hit a huge goal with her physique. And if you haven't been following along with her, she just wrapped up her calorie deficit, and I don't use the term shredded loosely, but shredded is the best way to describe it. Like, as you guys know, I'm in a calorie deficit right now, and Asia Zaza is definitely on the vision board. So without further ado, let me have you introduce yourself and just tell everyone again a little bit about who you are, what you do, where you live, and all of that, and then we'll get into it.
Well, you certainly know how to make a girl blush, Jenny. Thank you. It's a really big pleasure to be back here, and I'm really excited to share about Well Prepped today and just all of the things that can set your high achieving audience up for success. But first, a little bit about me. I am a mom of two young kids. My daughter is 3.5, and my son is 16 months. I am also the host of the Mindset Mile podcast. And if you haven't checked out the podcast yet, it was launched as a 30-day challenge to either walk or run 1 mile a day for 30 days while listening to the corresponding daily episode. So this was intended to help people build consistency in what they're doing. And though a mile, sure, it's not a lot, maybe to a lot of your ladies that are working out, right? But if it's not if it's not such a big deal, then it ends up being thrown to the wayside, right? And the whole idea behind the 30-day challenge is to build consistency by showing up because you said you would, because you committed, right? So, anyways, thereafter, my episodes launch weekly and it's all about personal development and fitness. And I weave in a lot of nutrition and just tips for entrepreneurs and the person that's really just looking to better build the or become the turned up version of their already awesome self is what I should say.
Yeah.
So I am a creative, and most importantly though, I am a mom. So that is what I do, and I live with my family in Santa Barbara, California. And I also recently just launched my first ebook, I should say, um, Well Prepped, which we'll be chatting about today.
Yeah. Oh, that's amazing. And if you the episode that you came on before that we talked about, the title was like becoming a fit chick. And I feel like this lines up really nicely with it because I think, yeah, that's something that you've also mastered. And I've got a lot of good feedback on that episode of how becoming a fit chick is a mindset, right? It really is a mindset. And then all of these other things fall into place from that. And I think like your podcast is a good example of that, of the mindset mile, right? It really is a mindset and taking care of yourself for not only your health and your like well-being, but also to build your shape too. And I think being well prepped is a part of that, right? It is a mindset. So let's just go back to maybe the start of people's journeys where let's say maybe someone has like they're loosely meal prepping, or they maybe it's something that they dread and they're like, I'm never doing 1,000 tiny containers again. Or it's something that they're like, I'd really love to have this like a well-oiled machine. Or maybe it's just something that they don't do. And then, they're rushing throughout the week and kind of randomly, feeding themselves throughout the week. So going back, like for that person, I would say the number one thing that I would say one of the number one things I hear from my ladies is that they realize the importance of planning and
Mhm.
preparing. Like that is it's like the first step and one of the number one things to be able to execute throughout the week. And so I don't know if you've ever had an experience where you weren't prepared or prepped versus now. And if you could kind of go back to that time and call out any of the differences that you've experienced.
I often talk about the 6 Ps on my podcast. And I can't even remember where I heard this, but it's something that I couldn't unhear. And it was proper preparation prevents piss poor performance.
So
And
good.
that's something that I try to think about in all of the things that are really important in my life is like, how can I create structure around these things so I'm setting myself up for success? I think we all can feel the difference when we're setting ourselves up for success, right? Like your day kind of flows a little bit easier. You aren't rushing, you're not scrambling. There isn't as much of a mental load. And meal prepping and food prepping is one of those things that I think takes up way more mental energy than people think it does or that they even consider, right? I mean, we eat on average 3 times a day, every single day for our entire lives. So to me, it's really important to know what you're going to eat throughout the week. And especially if you have, I know very um there's a variety of women that listen to your podcast. Some are entrepreneurs, some are parents, some are both, right? Like they all have busy lifestyles. But I think especially like since becoming a mom, I've realized how meticulous I need to be with my time sometimes. Is it going to work out perfectly all the time? No. But if I have a framework that I know that I can just plug into, then that to me is like setting myself up for success. And I used to not always have a system and I would fly by the seat of my pants. And sometimes it worked, but sometimes it didn't. And oftentimes it would end up with takeout, right? Or I would eat something that either wasn't that good or wasn't really serving my nutritional goals or my physique goals, right? So there's a myriad of different outcomes that can happen when you are unprepared, or you just reach for the bag of chips, right? Because you're so hungry and you don't have anything prepared that you end up just binging on the junk food, which is like what you don't want to do. So I I can tell a really big difference. I feel so much more efficient, and there's a level of peace. And I know that sounds really dramatic, but there's a sense of peace that I have knowing that I don't need to think about food. Like I can literally take it off my plate. Like pun
Yes.
intended. I
Yes.
don't really need to spend much time thinking about what I'm going to make every week. Well, I do. I pick it, but then once I pick it and I prep my things, it makes weeknight cooking so easy. And I also love knowing that I'm getting exactly what my body needs for my macros.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Okay. All of this. It's like double serving, right? It's efficient. Like to me, it feels like luxury. Like I know when I like going to my lunch break today, I know it's already ready and it's just waiting for me to literally, all I have to do is open up the top and I can start eating it. And it's delicious. And it feel like it's exactly what I need to make progress in my shape. And I'm like, this is the best, like set up for success. But I also have had many times back in the day where I was working late. I get home and I'm starving. I can't even think to
Mhm.
look at macros. Absolutely not. I can't even think to like, if it's going to take more than 3 steps, I just have to grab whatever is in front of me. Or if someone offers like to go out to eat or something like that, I'm like, yes, because I'm so hungry. And I know a lot of ladies can relate to that. And it's, I think we can't like we still have a human brain, right? We cannot outsmart it. I think we think, oh, no, during that time, I'll just make a good decision. But really, when it comes down to it, whether it's willpower or whether it's just having the things available or whatever, like you still have a brain where you have a primal brain and you have what are the two? Primal brain and like your front cortex, right? The other
Yeah, your prefrontal cortex.
that's the word, prefrontal cortex, right? And your primal brain in the moment, it's always going to take over. So if you plan ahead and have a system for planning ahead that checks all the boxes, you're just setting yourself up like for success. So I love how you said 2 systems, because I love systems, I love, and part of in Create Your Shape, we talk about having a nutrition routine. And I think that's the next thing. I think so many people try to meal prep, but they don't look at it as a system, a repeatable system, and they don't solve problems or like break down the steps. So if you think about meal prepping, like there are probably like 10 to 15 steps just within that. And I remember back in the day, I used to have like huge ambitions. And Sunday, I would like find all of these recipes that had 30 ingredients. And then I, would take a break and then I would go to the store and get everything. But of course, they didn't have this ingredient or this ingredient. So then I had to go to another store. And then by the time I figured it all out and I get home, and then I realized what I have to do to create this, I am like, oh my gosh, the last thing I want to do is, spend the next hours making this. And then half of it I would make and it wouldn't be good. And then I would be screwed for the rest of the week and be like, well, I'm just going to throw it away and then I'll, go back. So I remember all of that happening, but I would do that again and again. Like I would never learn my lesson of like, no, actually, let's break down all of these steps and be efficient with all of them and find something that actually works with my like week to week routine. So, with that, let's talk about thinking of it like a system. I know that's how you've laid out well prepped, but I also know there are like ton of different approaches. And I even asked you the other day when I was looking through well prepped again, I was like, wait, do you mean it to be like this or this way? And you're like, yeah, like to be efficient, I do it like this, but you could also do it like this and like this. And I think that's so beautiful because everyone does have a little bit different of a lifestyle, but also at the same time, they want like a proven system that works. So can you just share a little bit about maybe different systems that meal prep systems that you used before, or one you find that works really well now, and kind of touch on that.
So I have well prepped set up to prep once, cook twice, and you can eat all week.
I love that
So
saying too. It's like
that is
so
like the
efficient.
descriptor. Yeah. Prep once, cook twice, eat all week. So there's two personally, I have found this system to be the most efficient because I I want to create my meals for my family 95% of the time. Okay.
Mhm.
Like we eat at home most of the time. And for a variety of reasons, like I want to know what is going in my food. I would like to avoid the inflammatory oils that are in food when you eat out. It's cost effective. And of course, for macros, like it's very easy to customize exactly what you need and you don't need to estimate. So, in well prepped, the prepping once is going to set you up for weeknight cooking. So the prep really is, it varies from week to week. There are two recipes each week that you're going to be prepping for. And that I would say takes anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes max. Okay. So then you're going to put all of your things away in the fridge. And Monday night, when you get home and you're making your first recipe for the week, you know exactly what you need. You're going to get out your chopped veggies that you already made. You're going to get out the rice that you already prepared. All you're going to do is maybe cook the meat and like add the veggies and add a few ingredients and then bam, and throw it in the oven, right? And then that creates a meal that you can have that night plus two additional lunches or dinners, depending on the size of your family. And I do give different varieties of family sizes and how many servings it should give approximately. Like if you are a family of two adults and two kids, or if you're a family of, two adults and one kid. So, anyways, all of this to say, I have found that this is the way that I can provide really delicious home cooked meals without being a slave to the kitchen every night of the week. I really enjoy cooking. I know some people don't. So hopefully this mitigates the issue for the people that don't like to cook. But I think that the people that do like to cook will also appreciate that they don't need to spend every, an hour or 45 minutes like every night making dinner for their family. Like it doesn't need to be, you have to do this or it's, takeout or this. Like there is an in between. And I think well prepped helps people find that happy middle ground. Another thing that I feel like I'm really good at doing is repurposing my leftovers. I personally don't mind eating the same thing over and over and over again, especially if it's really good.
That is where
But
I'm at. If it's good, I like look forward to it all
me
day.
too.
But I get it. I understand that that's not the case for everyone. And I loved how you have like leftover suggestions and
Yeah,
how
I
you
call it so
typically do it.
leftovers reimagined.
Yeah.
So another strength of mine is, if I'm not using well prepped as my framework for the week, usually what we do in my house is we'll grill like tri-tip and chicken and grilled veggies. And then I'm also making like rice and sweet potato. And from those things, I have like 5 or 6 different go-tos that I can whip up so easily with some leftover grilled chicken, veggies, and rice, right? Anything from like stir fry to scrambles to salads, or I'll make like a quick banza pasta and I'll add everything in it and I'll just add some pesto or like a red sauce or something, So it's mixing up these really simple things that didn't take much time to make and you're creating this like whole new meal and it
Okay.
only took, you know, 15 minutes.
Yes. All right. Let's pause here because I feel like this is really good and it's so second nature to you, but for so many people, it is not. So the first thing I noticed is it's again another framework that you have that you can pull out, you can choose each week and be like, okay, this is the framework I'm using this week. And then the second thing is you listed almost instead of a meal prep, you listed almost like a food prep. And then my ladies are familiar with you listed it as create your plate. So you have your protein source, you have your starchy carb source, and then you have your vegetable source. So like you prep those are like the main things. So you know that you're getting your macros and you know you're creating your plate. And then this is where it gets good, that so many people are like, wait, how does she do this? Then throughout the week, you take those and then you add in, and this is actually kind of a question, is how do you think about this? Do you think about like, okay, I have my 3 options here, and then, or not my 3 options, but I have my 3 like almost like bases.
Mhm.
And then I can change up the seasoning in, like, this is how I think about it, but I want you to confirm and then enlighten me. Then I can change up the seasoning and sauces, or the way that it's cooked, or add in like lettuce, or add in these different things to be able to like swap things around and create a new, almost like cuisine with it. Is that how you think about it? Or what's the framework around it?
So each week, the protein is going to be the same for both of the recipes. So let's just take, for instance, the like week one is banh mi bowls and carnitas tacos. Okay, so you're going to take the pork roast that you cook in the slow cooker, you're going to divide it in half, and you're going to make 2 completely separate meals. So it's not like you're getting tired of what you're eating for the person that doesn't like to eat the same thing over and over and over again, right? We're going to use the same protein and make this Asian dish with the first portion of your protein, and then we're going to make a Mexican inspired dish with the second. Okay. So it gives you 2 completely different flavor profiles. But then within those, each of those recipes, like within the banh mi bowls, like if you make them as they're written in the book, right, you're going to get your rice and your pickled cucumber, and you're going to add your cilantro. But then I give a way to reuse the meat in a different way, right? So, like if day 2, you're like, well, I don't want to use this for dinner. I actually want to use this for lunch. I give a few different ways where then that banh mi meat can be used as like a burrito or a salad or a bowl of sorts. Okay. And then when you move on to the second recipe of the week, which is the carnitas tacos, you're going to prepare them as the book says, right? And you're going to have them as tacos with the mango salsa and whatever else you want to enjoy on the side, or add your hot sauce or whatever. And then for that recipe, I give like 2 to 3 different examples of how you can reuse that carnitas meat to create like maybe a quesadilla or a scramble or something else, just a different way to use what you've already prepared, but that's not going to be super laborious.
That is so helpful. And it almost makes you think like, oh my gosh, there are unlimited ways to change it up pretty simply that I never thought about before. That is
Yeah.
pretty fantastic. Okay. So this is so helpful.
One of my top priorities when it comes to health, fitness, and recovery is staying hydrated. Water is literally life. And when you're well hydrated, you can tell the difference it makes everywhere in your life. And if you're like me, you want to know that you're drinking the safest, cleanest, and best water possible. Especially now with having kids, I take our drinking water seriously, which is why I use the AquaTru purifier. You guys, this thing is amazing. It's a countertop water purifier that uses a 4-step osmosis purification process, and it removes 15 times more contaminants than any other water pitcher filter. It has been a great installation-free option for us, but they also make higher capacity under sink options. AquaTru technology has been tested to remove harmful water contaminants, including chlorine, fluoride, arsenic, nitrate, and PFAs, which are also known as forever chemicals. And I love that the filter doesn't need to be frequently changed. They last anywhere between 6 and 12 months, as opposed to the usual 2 to 3 month time frame. As a Mindset Mile listener, you can get 20% off any AquaTru purifier. Just go to aquatru.com and use the code MindsetMile at checkout to get 20% off. That's AquaTru, AquaTru.com and use code MindsetMile at checkout to get 20% off. If you can spot a too good to be true health hack from a mile away and read labels like it's your job, congrats, you're a skeptic. And in this day and age, you really have to be with all of the tricky and false marketing big food companies use to get you to buy their product. And Ritual knows that every good skeptic deserves a multivitamin that exceeds your standards. Did you know that 97% of women ages 19 to 50 are not getting enough vitamin D from their diet? And based on a clinical study, Ritual's Essential for Women 18 and up was shown to increase vitamin D levels by 43%. I personally love that the company is a B Corp, meaning that they are holding themselves to a higher standard and they are accountable to not just their company's financial health, but also the health of people and our planet. Ritual's Essential for Women 18 and up is a multivitamin you can actually trust. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/mindsetmile. Start Ritual or add Essential for Women 18 and up multivitamin to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/mindsetmile for 25% off. Something I learned recently that blew my mind is that the indoor air we breathe is 2 to 5 times more polluted than outdoor air. And in some cases, up to 100 times more polluted, according to the EPA. And air pollution is responsible for nearly 7 million premature deaths globally. We've personally been using an air purifier in our home for a few years, but I haven't appreciated how much work it was doing until now. The Air Doctor is an air purifier that filters out 99.99% of dangerous contaminants so that your lungs don't have to. This includes pollutants such as allergens, pollen, pet dander, dust mite, mold spores, and even bacteria and viruses that make you sick. Air Doctor comes with a 30-day breathe easy money back guarantee. So if you don't love it, just send it back for a refund minus the shipping. Head to airdoctorpro.com and use promo code MindsetMile to receive up to $300 off air purifiers. And exclusive to podcast customers, you will also receive a free 3-year warranty on any unit, which is an additional $84 value. Go get your Air Doctor purifier today at Air Doctor Pro. That's AIRDOCTORPRO.com and use code MindsetMile.
Okay, so one other thing that I want to talk about, because my ladies, I feel like they want to learn. They love like the frameworks. They want to understand it. And that really helps them with the execution part of it. So I want to talk about just tips and considerations with meal prepping, and especially that are laid out in your well-prepped system. I mean, the two that already stand out to me, well, I would say 3. The first is that they're all macro-friendly meals. And I know we had like talked about this, but you're putting it together. And what does that mean? They're high protein. They have a complex carb source. They have vegetables, again, like create your plate, but they're not a lot of like high fatty meals. Like even the protein sources you choose are really lean. So that's something that stood out to me. Something else that stands out to me is that you considered when you're doing what, kind of like the steps that I talked about before, where, okay, you'll use this time to prep everything. Then you'll use another time to, that's when you'll cook it. Like you've just really thought out of how to make it efficient and systemized to like lay out your week with. And then the other thing that I see is that the cuisines, like you've thought about cuisines, like you nonchalantly mentioned before, but this is like a big deal that other people don't consider. So you're like, you'll have a Asian meal for the first half of the week and then Mexican meal for the second half of the week, like to really satisfy your taste buds. So those are all things that I just was excited to see, because I feel like those things are needed, especially for my type of ladies, right, who have similar goals and lifestyles that we have. Is there anything else that I'm missing that I feel like would be important to call out?
Well, for the convenience of it, I also, so not only do I provide weekly grocery lists for the person that likes to go, to the store, I include a list of everything that you're going to need for the entire week of making both recipes. But additionally, to keep it super efficient, I created Instacart links. So within the guide, like on the weekly grocery list page, you'll also see at the very top, it says like buy week one's groceries here. And it's hyperlinked to Instacart. So all people really have to do, it's literally taking like the heavy lifting out of what do I make this week? What do we feel like having? Where do I need to go grocery shopping to get it? And then how in the world do I execute at the end of the day when I'm exhausted and running late and my kids are tired and blah blah blah, right? Like it takes all of the heavy lifting out of it. So people have really enjoyed having all of the guesswork removed for them.
I know that I like first went through, like I bought it day one that you put it out, and I went through this, and every now and then I get little like, oh, I kind of want to be back in the States. Like little things like make me feel that way. And this was one of them because Instacart linked, and then all of the different foods that you use, like there's just it's so limited in options here, but it's given me so much inspiration, even if I can't get half the ingredients that I'm again going back to like, oh, this is a good way for it to be macro friendly, or oh, this is a good way for think of use this cuisine, or oh, I could actually make that with this topping. So anyway, the Instacart link though, I was just like above and beyond of like, yes, efficiency, like this is systemized, so good. Yeah, that is so smart. Anything else as far as like considerations or tips that you think about just throughout your week generally, or even things that show up in well prepped?
This isn't anything that anyone has to do. This isn't in well prepped, but something that I find inspires me in the kitchen is when I have things that work in my kitchen. Okay. And that might include having matching Tupperware with lids that fit that you don't need to go guessing, right? So to me, that that kind of like kickstarts a little bit of motivation. Like if I was someone that was like jumping into like, okay, I want to start this program, what do I need to like set myself up? That's something that I would consider. Like, do you have the proper tools that you actually need to cook with, to store your food? And also things that are going to be visually appealing to you if that's your personality type. Like that could inspire a lot of satisfaction, and motivation for people that they didn't realize they actually needed. So I guess that's something that I want to encourage people to do is like, you don't have to hang on to things that are old or that you don't like anymore or that don't work. Like be efficient in the kitchen where you have things that work and that serve their purpose really well. I think that's something that's like worth investing in. And I also do list in well prepped, like for those people that might want, like, what are the basic things that I find super helpful in my kitchen? I link those as well, like in the guide. So these are like my must have like kitchen favorites. So again, tried to remove the searching and the research that it takes to compare some of these things. And I've listed out all my favorites for people to get if they don't have, or to replace if they need to. So that is a little tip. And also, I think I used to go to the grocery store and I would buy things kind of on a whim. I would be like, "Ooh, maybe I'll make this week and maybe I'll make that." And oh, this kind of seems like a good snack. I think what helps in having a framework and a plan, a meal plan literally every week is that you're not going to be overbuying groceries and throwing them out. Like food waste is a huge deal, right? And like we really should do our best to eliminate as much food waste as possible. Um, but it's going to save you money and waste by committing to just like, okay, this is my plan. I'm sticking to it. And I don't need to be tempted just because I'm at the store to like grab all these other things that might go bad or I might not need or um, that. So just to encourage like smart shopping, go to the store with a list, especially if you're hungry, and stick to the list.
Yes. Both of so good because first of all, there is nothing worse than opening up the cabinet and having to like scrummage through it to search for like matching lid containers like that. Oh, I remember doing that so many times. And that feeling alone would like discourage anyone from wanting to meal prep. And then I totally agree when it comes to saving time and saving money in the grocery store. And same thing, that feeling I used to get on Sundays where it was like the dread of going to the grocery store and then you're hungry and you get there and you're like trying to make decisions. And you're like, that looks
Mhm.
good. Yeah, maybe I'll try this. And then throwing food out every week, like, oh, bringing back some bad memories. But I totally agree on all that. It's so good. So let's dive into well prepped. I have it open in front of me, and we've covered a lot of the framework and a lot of the different tidbits that you have in it. But can you just go over again, if you like zoomed out to explain it to someone, can you go over that? And then maybe we'll go into some meal examples after that.
Sure. I was inspired to create meal or well prepped because of the system that I found that worked for me. And a lot of these recipes are ones that I've been making for a really long time that I would post on Instagram and people would always ask me like, "Oh, what's the recipe to this?" or like, "How are you so creative and like how do you always have so much time to cook?" Right? There's this like image online that like everyone has everything they need and all the time in the world. I'm like, no, I have two small kids. I work. I have a lot going on. Like I prioritize my fitness and my health as well and my household. So I have to be efficient. And what I found back in the day, and even still now, we are surrounded with inspiration, food inspiration,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're a foodie, you follow food accounts or people that post recipes, right? And with the best intentions, you might save them to your Pinterest board or your Instagram if you have boards saved on Instagram for different like inspiration. If I were to look through my Instagram inspiration for like meals or recipes that I have saved because it looked amazing, right? In the reel that I watched, I was like, oh my gosh, for sure making this 100% not dying until I have this in my mouth because it would look so good that I've never made, right? Like you go through and you save all these things. And then it's like the decision fatigue when you're like, oh, what do I actually want to make? And then you even look at all of the inspiration that you have and then you can't even decide because it's like it's too much. We are too inspired where there's not enough execution. Too much
Mhm.
inspiration, not enough execution. So I really toyed around with like how long do I want to make this cookbook, right? I could have made 52 weeks of recipes, right? Where you're cooking two recipes per week. But for one, I don't know about you, but like I've never made more than 2, maybe 3 recipes in any type of cookbook I've ever had. Okay, so I didn't want that to be well prepped. Like I wanted people to utilize it because they were like, "Wow, this hits different. Like this works for me. I like all the recipes." And when I thought about the things that I eat all the time and that I make for my family, they were literally the same like 5 things, right?
Mhm.
Like you have your same meals on repeat and you just go through them. And I was like, I would rather have 8 weeks, 16 recipes that are home runs rather than like bog down the brain or like I want to eliminate people thinking that they need to like skip through and pick something. No, these are your 8 weeks that you can literally just put on repeat. And I don't know how many times a year that would be, but maybe 5 times. Like if you made the same recipe like 5 times in a year, like that's really not that much. You're still getting a lot of variety with 16 different recipes, but it's condensed enough where you don't need to be overwhelmed by it. And you can move through the cookbook and be like, all right, on to the next week. What are we making this week? And you're going to love it. Right.
Yes.
So
It's cool that
my,
it's almost like guided too, which I think is so helpful because even like you talked about the decision fatigue, even if you had an open-ended cookbook, you still have to make the decision of what you're going to make that week, where this it's guided through. It's like,
yeah,
you can
week
just
one,
week one,
week
week two.
two,
Oh, it's so
yeah,
good.
week three.
Yeah.
And you had asked me, like, hey, when I'm prepping this, like, should I be doing this at the same time? I have a section right before the two recipes. There's a section called Let's Prep. This is everything that you're going to prep for the week for both recipes. And in a perfect world, and people would, for the people that want to follow it to a T, yes, I would pick a day, whether that's Saturday or Sunday or whatever day you want to start your week, prep your things, get them all ready. And then maybe Monday and Thursday or Monday and Wednesday are your cook days where you're using your prepped ingredients to then create the recipes. Now, if someone can look at this layout of like, okay, week one, week two, week three, and take creative liberty and hop around, like you don't have to follow it week one, week two verbatim. You can, of course, pick which week you want to make. But the idea is that you're making and prepping ingredients for those two recipes that week because they're going to use a lot of the same ingredients. But like I mentioned before, they're going to be two completely different meals that are going to give you a lot of variety.
Yeah. So essentially, you've already thought of everything. And to be most efficient, just follow the way it is. But if you feel like super savvy and you've got it down and you have ideas, then go for it too. The question I did have
Totally. And
though. Okay.
another thing you asked too was like, could I make both of the recipes in one day? Sure. Like if you want to cook once, by all means, like eliminate your second cook day and just have one big prep day where you're making these meals and then you're just setting your entire week up for
Yeah.
success, right? So, yes, there's no rules against like, oh, you have to make them two at a time or
Yeah.
whatever. You can take the creative liberty to use it how it best suits you, or you can just follow it to a T.
Awesome. I love that. And then I know people are going to have the question of like, okay, but how long is it going to take for that prep section on the weekend? And then on, like, if I followed it, the way laid out, like I prep on Saturday or Sunday, and then I make the first dinner on Monday night, like how long is the prep session about? And then how long is that Monday night for the first meal about? Like, how long does it take?
I would say the prep is going to take anywhere between 20 to 30 minutes. And that would even be for someone that's not super efficient in the kitchen. But like anything, there's going to be a little learning curve, right? Like with any new recipe, I feel like I'm constantly like looking back at my food and looking back at the recipe, looking back at my food, back at the recipe, right? So this might be a slower thing like in the beginning where you're just kind of double checking your work. But after a while, you will see that I use a lot of the same ingredients and a lot of the same processes, with different within the recipes, I should say. So it's kind of like you learn the style as you go. And I think inevitably you just become more efficient, like if you just continue following the book.
Yeah.
So I would say 20 minutes max. There might be a week where you're prepping the rice, which obviously rice takes more than 20 minutes to cook. But as far as like physical labor, it shouldn't take more than about 20 minutes. And
Mhm.
then the nights that you're cooking, I would say you're putting everything together and cooking it in 15 to 20 minutes as well.
And on the like cook nights, are you actually cooking anything or are you more assembling?
It's more assembling, right? So maybe like for the one week is a shredded chicken, sweet potato, and like black bean enchilada casserole.
Hmm.
Okay, this is like one of my family's favorites. It's really good. So this really is about just adding all the things to like the pot, giving it a quick stir, and then just assembling it and throwing it in the oven.
Okay.
So oh, yeah, it's not even so much that you're going to be again, I tried to reduce the amount of labor spent in one sitting, so you're kind of dividing that labor up by like prepping first that shortens the cook time, and then like the cook time is shortened because the things are prepped, you know?
Yes, totally makes sense. It's so brilliant. I just love the way you think because I feel like it's the way I think, but then also it's the way that my audience and my ladies think and like want to be organized and efficient. It's so good. So let's also talk about some of the different meal options that you have on here because I have the pictures in front of me, so they just like are delicious. But let's just give some people an idea of some of the different options that you have in here. Like the sweet potato casserole, I know that is one that I'm like trying to figure out. We don't have an oven here. It's just not a thing in Bali. Anyway, I'm like trying to figure out like, oh, maybe I can just make that a different way. But also there's things like shredded chicken and white bean soup. So do we just want to go through and give some examples
Yeah.
of
You know, I think one of the biggest questions people are always asking me is like, can I get a peek into the book? And I'm like, okay, I need to figure out a way to like give people more of an insight into the book. But for example, one of the weeks is chicken parmesan stuffed bell peppers. And the other recipe is a Southwest chicken and quinoa salad. Um, and then
if you're
let's see,
feeling
what
like your burger people, there is a burger bowl with sweet potato fries in there.
Oh, I love the deconstructed burger bowl is always a hit. That is like one that we frequent in my household. It's so easy. It's so delicious. Another favorite week of ours is the chicken pesto pasta with asparagus and sun-dried tomato. And then the second recipe that week is the one pan garlic chicken and rice pilaf. And as I'm saying these, I realize that they sound like really fancy. But truly, they when you actually assemble these and put them together, you're like, wow, cooking really delicious food is way easier than I was making it out to be or that it sounded like. So that's another thing is like I wanted people to be able to make simple, delicious, like wholesome meals using whole ingredients and also create a product that you're super proud of. It makes you feel kind of like a chef. You're like, damn, this is great. Like I would serve this for company coming over, you know?
Yeah. And it's serving your like physique and health goals too, which I know a lot of ladies listen to this is like that's a priority for them. So, and lastly, I just want to talk about two that you have used this to create an amazing shape, even while you're in a calorie deficit. And I think that's really important to show that this isn't like if I see, you know, on Pinterest, there's like, eat this if you want to lose weight or eat this if you want to build muscle. But it's like you can adjust all of these portions to whatever macros that you need and whatever goal or season that you're in. It's not like, oh, this will work for that or this won't work for that. It's like it works because it's real food, creating your plate, like lean source of the protein. Like, so do you have anything you want to add to that as you've used this where you've been in a calorie deficit?
You know, I it was very easy for me to adjust the portions to my macros when I was in a deficit.
Mhm.
But the recipes are intended to be macro friendly, as we've mentioned, right? So this is probably better for or I shouldn't say better, but I feel like it's going to be used without such scrutiny by someone that's maybe in their like maintenance phase, right? So these are all the serving size of protein per dish is approximately, you know, like 25 to 40 grams of protein. Fats are between, I would say, 15 to 22, 23 per serving. And then carbs, again, probably looking at like 25 to 35 grams of carbs like per serving. So because these are made in your kind of bulk cooking,
Mhm.
this is not the type of meal prep where you're going to be portioning out everything into your little Tupperware and like weighing it ounce by ounce or gram
Yep.
by gram. So I mean, for me, I wanted it to be accessible to people because I think so many people are very confused and overwhelmed by macros. Not maybe your audience or the ladies that have gone through your program because they have a deeper understanding, but at least they can look at food in macros now and understand and like guesstimate this is a portion size that I need like for my day and for my meal. So I wanted to capture the people that like are a little more conscious about adjusting things to their macros, but it could also be for the person that doesn't really want to think about it anymore or that is eating a little bit more intuitively, knowing that the portions are intended to be macro friendly.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good because kind of like you said, it's like even for the person who's like not even thinking about it, just by executing this, they're still going to be directional with the macros
Yes,
that they need. And then the
exactly.
person who is doing macros, right? And if you're in Create Your Shape, you get really savvy with it and you know how to estimate. And you, even if you're bulking a meal like this, you know how to like tweak it to
Mhm.
still hit your targets. So I kind of feel like, yeah, that's the best of both options, which is great. Is there anything else that we haven't gone over when it comes to being well prepped or the actual ebook that you think would be important to share? I know we've covered a lot.
Well, I guess that would just be where people can buy
Yeah.
it. But no, I mean, you've asked such great questions, Jenny, and I'm really glad to be able to talk about the book this way and dive a little bit more into like, I don't know, to me, living a fit chick lifestyle, like we first talked about on your show, it's taking a holistic approach to your life. And in that you need to be like realistic with what you're able to do, right? With like having high expectations of like wanting to hit these macros, but then also not having as much time as you used to if you're a mom now. And, you know, I really feel like taking the pressure off by allowing, or following, I should say, a program that is directional like this. I just want people to have like that peace of mind, knowing that like I am doing something good for my body and it's delicious as well. And like I can enjoy it and have fun doing it.
Yeah.
So it's really important to me to just represent like a holistic approach and not such a like, you know, I guess meticulous like approach all the time. Like it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be that way. So,
So
but otherwise,
I know people are like, oh my gosh, like you guys keep talking about it, just like, where can I get it? And what does that look like?
yeah. So the book is $37. It's priced for
You
anybody
guys.
to get.
It's like a no-brainer, right? You're gonna save that much money just in the grocery store in 1 week. Like it is insane. I feel like it's the value is like 200 times that much. But anyway, go on.
Well, thank you. That means a lot. I really wanted to over deliver and make, really give people something that was like worth their buck. So it's $37. You can purchase it at aishazaza.com. That's AISHAZAZA. So my first and last name.com. And it'll take you right to the link where you can like read a little bit more about it. And then you download it, or I'm sorry, you purchase it and it'll be sent directly to your email where you can then download. And I like to save the actual PDF on my notes app in my phone. That way I'm not always like digging for the email every time I need to, pull it up. It's just right there in my notes. So I've created a note in my phone called Well Prepped, and when you're in the guide, like after it's downloaded, you have that little arrow, like if you're going to send it, like, or attach it to an email, you can add it to a note, like it'll bring up the notes app. So
Yeah.
that's been like a really efficient way to store it where you have like really quick and easy access. You can also follow me on Instagram at Aisha Zaza, and I have it linked in my profile there as well. And yeah, just follow along for all like the mindset, mom life, fitness, nutrition inspo.
Yeah, and we'll put that link in the show notes along with all the other ways people can follow you. And then also your podcast. Can you just remind everybody the name of your podcast in case they want to listen to that as well?
Yes, check out the Mindset Mile. You can find it anywhere that you listen to podcasts. And all of the episodes are they're intended to be very quick, right? So like I wanted to keep with that intention that someone is listening to this while they're moving their body, preferably walking 1 mile a day.
Mhm.
But of course, you don't have to, but all the episodes are bite sized. So they're between like 12 and 15 minutes of like personal development.
Amazing. Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and just sharing all of your like meal prep wisdom and how to be well prepped and then just creating this that's so brilliant and so thoughtful for people to be able to use just in their week to week life. So thank you for all that and thank you for coming on.
Thanks, Jenny. It was so great to chat with you, and I hope this serves your ladies big.
It will for sure. It already has. I actually have put this as a link in my program too, because we go over the importance of having a like meal prep system. And so I already know my ladies have been using this as well, which is awesome. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. And I'll see you next week on the Create Your Shape podcast.